How's it going, everyone? And welcome back to Sip Talk. I'm Pete Sippis, and I'm joined by our favorite guest, Alex Bauer. But we are not here to talk Final Destination. No. The only destination we care about is Women's World Cup glory. So we are going down to Australia, we're going down to New Zealand, and we are discussing the 2023 Women's World Cup. Bauer, how are you?
I'm doing great, my friend. Have you been enjoying the games?
I've been enjoying the matches, the ones I can stay up for, the ones that are on
Yeah.
in the morning I can get up for. But this is great. I bring you on for other episodes because you're a movie expert, but you might, I won't say you're more of a women's football expert than you are a movie expert. Until I get a Substack about Arsenal women's, then I'll put it up there. But I would say you're the most knowledgeable person in women's football that at least I know personally, merely because of your love for the Arsenal women's team.
Yes, thank you for that lovely introduction. And I think that's kind of my go-to for this Women's World Cup is not really following a team per se, besides probably the United States, because I will follow them. But I'm just following the Arsenal players, man. I'm just excited for Russo, our new striker. I'm excited for the season coming up, but glad to have some World Cup footy to talk about.
I'm glad you bring up Alyssa Russo because being a podcast with the Women's World Cup, you got to jump into the U.S. team. Are they in trouble? Got to jump in. We'll get there in just a second. But I do want to talk about congrats on getting Alyssa Russo because I was convinced she was coming down to here in the District of Columbia to join the Washington Spirit. For those who don't know, the Washington Spirit owner, Michelle Kang, is now part of a global football ownership conglomerate that's kind of going to be the women's version of Manchester City, of Red Bull Leipzig and Salzburg. And she teamed up with the owner of Crystal Palace and their women's team, as well as Olympique Lyon, who is probably the most storied franchise in all women's soccer in Europe, who already own a team in Seattle that they're now going to have to sell. So just based on NWSL rules. And I was so convinced that Alyssa Russo was going to come down to the Washington Spirit, or at least the NWSL, because I bought into the United States centric Kool-Aid that the NWSL is the best league in the world because for so long we've been the best national team in the world. And now I'm starting to think that that is not necessarily true. I'm starting to think the NWSL is not as tactically sound as some of these European teams, maybe leagues. I'm also starting to think that the US might not have, they might have the best individual talents in the world, but they might not have the best team in the world. And I think that's what is starting to really come to fruition during this World Cup.
That's a lot to unpack there to start it off. Let's just start USA because I think that's the big talking point because for so long they've dominated and they are the two-time champs in the last 2 years, and they're going for the three-peat. And based on the three performances they've had so far, not looking too good. And I think it's not that they're not talented. I mean, top to bottom, the roster is probably the most talened.
That's what I said. They have the best individual talents. I'm not doubting that.
It's just that teams have caught up to them. And other teams can match the United States' talent. And now where the talent levels are matched, now it becomes a tactics game and who's got the best tactics. Whereas kind of in the years before, maybe 10, 15 years ago, the U.S. could dominate just on athleticism. You know what I mean?
And it's interesting you mentioned the tactics because I think that's something that I haven't really noticed until I heard it. I have not heard great women's soccer analysis throughout the mediums that I'm consuming this, whether that be Fox Sports, whose coverage is usually a joke in general because they have Alexi Lawless on. And we can get to their overreaction about celebrating later. But even, some of the, like us in the Le Batard show, Metal Arc Media, and they have like their own soccer podcast. They have these two guys on, and one's like, "Oh yeah, like we're gonna dominate. Our bench could win this World Cup, yada yada yada." And then they give the concession of, "Oh well, like some of these teams are catching up." And I don't know I don't know what happened in the year since 2019, the World Cup, that we won, but it seems like everyone thinks that every match the US played in was the Thailand match, that we just dominated every single one and it wasn't even close. Every match in the knockout stage was close. You can make an argument the most lopsided one was the final, which was 2-0, but that was 0-0 most of the match, and the Dutch played us very well.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of close, but everyone think, oh, Alex Morgan against England, sipping the tea. We dominated them. We beat them 2-1. It was still a close match.
Mm-hmm.
All those matches were close. And then we had a major tournament after that, the Olympics, that were pushed to 2021, and Sweden kicked our ass 3-0.
And
And then
guess who we
and then we lost to Canada in the semis, so ended up winning the gold. I think we got bronze that tournament. Like, we didn't win that. So this whole so I hate when I hear on the broadcast, oh, this World Cup is showing these European teams are catching up. No, the European teams have caught up. Like, that's just a fact. And I've been saying that for since the Olympics in 2021. My biggest shock, and we can get into this a little bit later, is that it's the African and South American countries that are catching up, because I did not have that in the cards. And that's me being, I criticize people for being American centric in women's soccer. I'm guilty of being a little Eurocentric because I did not have Morocco and South Africa playing as well as they did.
It's very interesting because this sport, soccer, is very much kind of like baseball in the sense that like history matters, and a lot of people are caught up in like Brazil being a dominant player and England being prominent, and for the women's side, the United States being prominent. But a lot of people kind of are blinded by that, and they don't react to like what's happening on the pitch right now. My dad's sister and I were watching some of the games over this past weekend, and one of the commentators, we kind of made a comment toward each other because one of the commentators said like, like this is, back in 1995 or whatever, in the 90s, like when Norway won, it was like, oh, Norway. And they went on like 5 minutes about the 90s in Norway. And it's like, we're not talking about like the matches now. Like, we're still stuck in our history mindset. And it's just like, it doesn't really matter what happened in the 90s, right? Other teams are catching up and other teams are better. And Jamaica, just putting on, probably not like a clinic in terms of goal scoring, but they're playing with heart and passion and great tactics. And it's like, let's talk about what's happening right now,
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think you can't even look back to 2019 because this is a completely different team.
Yeah.
Like, we have some people coming back, but I mean, like Alyssa Thompson, Trini, they're young, they're new people. And it's so funny how in American sports, we always talk about who's going to win, talent versus experience. We love doing that in like the NBA playoffs, where it's like, Golden State is a 5 seed, but they have experience. They have proven grit, but that's not talked about. And I was telling you, and I like wasn't joking when I sent this. And my text to you during the USA Netherlands match, granted, I was being a little bit silly, but my Wellington analysis was spot on. And I said, if you can't win in the Windy Welly, then you don't deserve to be a champion. And I think I'm right. I don't know if the US deserves to be champions because they got outplayed in the midfield by the Netherlands.
If you can't beat Portugal 0-0, like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's ridiculous.
I know a lot of teams have players missing. The US have injured players, but if Vivian Miedema didn't have a torn ACL, the Netherlands would have beat us, because
100%.
And because it was funny. I was texting one of my friends at work who doesn't know a lot about women's soccer, and I kind of go on like a first take rant, and I'm just like, here's what they're gonna do. They're gonna have like Jill Roord in the midfield, but kind of playing a false 9, and they're gonna plug her in when they need to. And guess who scored the first goal of that match from the top of the box when she presses a little bit up on the attack? Jill Roord, who is an incredible talent. Like, in this Dutch team, I find it so funny how, the marketing of this tournament is, we all know America, blah, 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 blah. And I love how Danielle van de Donk is just referred to Haran's teammate, the dirty tackle, and then the response, this is like her, third, fourth World Cup? She was a major player in the 2019 that got them to the final. She's like an incredible talent in Europe. She's been there forever. And it's one of those things where I'm just like, they have names. Like people that aren't
Absolutely.
American have names. And the Dutch experience showed. Like, granted, they didn't have Vivian Miedema, but like a Martins, I think they're almost their entire defense was that same team. I believe in 2019. I know they brought back
Yeah.
pardon me for blanking on her name. I should know better as I'm criticizing Fox Sports. But again, their midfield, when you have Jill Royd and Danielle Vonderdank, like these are good players. But it
Former
annoys me. It annoys
former
me
Arsenal players.
when Fox News has 2 hours of pregame coverage, but they can't
Mm-hmm.
dedicate a little bit to, oh, here's the game has changed, which like what we're seeing right now is because of the US. And I
Mm-hmm.
cannot stress that enough. Like everyone is caught up because of the equal pay movement, because of the talent of this US team. You ask anyone around the world, my friends in New Zealand who are getting into women's soccer, they know Megan Rapinoe because my friends in New Zealand are liberal feminists and they love her. Like, and it's been frustrating where it would benefit Fox Sports if they actually covered people outside the US. You have so much time. I get the time zones are all kind of screwed up. But like when you look at their men's World Cup coverage, they know they just can't focus on the men because they're stars in other countries. And it's kind of a chicken the egg thing where it's like, can Fox make the stars or do the stars make themselves? And I think on the men's side, the stars make themselves. But I think Fox Sports could make these other women stars outside the US that help their broadcast. And my example is NBC covering the Olympics in any sport. They can take some random archer and make them a cult hero. They took some shirtless dude from Tonga and he ended up being in the Winter Olympics. Like they can make stories, and I just find their coverage so lazy.
Yeah, it's easy to pick on for sure, but it's easy. It's also easy to understand. I mean, as much as I hate to admit it, the guys' game is just so much bigger and just more recognizable faces. I mean, you can have the best woman player in the world, and Messi has 10 times as much recognizability.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what I mean? So
and in no way am I comparing that. I'm just thinking if like I mean I don't want to get into the how corrupt FIFA and Fox were to get this World Cup, but like Fox could elevate other
for
players
sure,
outside the
for
US
sure.
that would benefit their own ratings, that would
There
benefit the sport.
there are so many great players in this Women's World Cup, and so many budding stars. The I think she's 18-year-old from Colombia, Casillero.
Dude,
Um,
she's incredible.
oh
Goal of
my
the
god!
tournament so far, where she just
Oh,
picked that top corner.
that or Katie McCabe's Olympico there. Don't forget that against Canada.
Yeah. We'll get. Trust me, we'll get into Canada in a bit.
But I mean, but our points are there are so many young stars, young faces, a lot of young talented women out there that Fox could definitely like, hey, this is the next rising star, and promote her or promote a league almost. And I don't think Fox has any streaming for any of the major soccer leagues, but I know like for Paramount Plus they have NWSL games, and they also have the Super League for in England. And so it almost makes sense if like CBS / Paramount would have the World Cup coverage just for to promote those leagues.
Yeah, the problem is the men's and women's World Cup is bundled when it comes to
Yeah,
rights.
yeah.
And also again, I won't get into it, but I'm pretty sure there's a little bit of corruption
Oh,
because
for sure.
because Fox was going to sue FIFA because the World Cup got into the NFL schedule and FIFA was like, what if we just gave you another one? But that's a different podcast. I
That's
think
the,
one last thing I want to touch on with the US
mm-hmm.
in the NWSL, we're talking tactics. And
Can I just say something quick?
yeah, go for
Um,
it.
I think there are better teams in other leagues in the NWSL, but I think top to bottom, they're still the best.
I think top to bottom, they also are still the best. I think that's also what happens when you don't have relegation and it's building, and these women's teams that are big get money from the resources from their men's teams and already
Mm-hmm.
that branding. So yes, if you were to take like the UEFA Women's Champions League, like the top 12 teams from there and put them against the NWSL, it would be better. But yes, individually, the NWSL is better than any league in Europe, top to bottom. I'll give you there. What I found interesting, and I didn't realize it until I heard it, is that the NWSL is a little bit of an individualistic, like let them cook. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that, or I think I did realize that, but I didn't think about how to impact the World Cup, because when I go to Washington Spirit matches, I'm just like, let Trinity cook. And I love it. And now I'm watching the matches and I'm just like, Trinity, pass the ball. Like,
Do you,
can we please get some passes strung together and not just trying to lob it every time?
do you think that's just rooted in just American sports in general? Just like
Yes. Yep.
we're just so more star centric. We know we go to games because we want to see the big stars. Where in Europe, it's a little bit more like community oriented. You know.
I think at a very deeper core level, yes. I also just think that I think also the system of the US, like the US had the advantage because of Title IX. Obviously, everyone knows that by now. That's why they're so dominant. England women weren't allowed to play on pitches that weren't freaking mud in Regent's Park up until like the 70s. And so yes, they had that advantage in the system until Title IX, but also what came with Title IX and the whole college sports complex is pay to play in high school and middle school. And that does not exist anywhere else. I think that's always the big criticism with the US team will never be as good because we have pay to play, because we prioritize athletes who hit their growth spurt at a younger age. And so we have an entire third of talent who just get overlooked because they hit their growth spurt at 14 instead of 11. And I think you can also say the same thing about the women's game and just sports in general.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I did find funny was I was watching Morning Joe. Um, it was after the Netherlands match and had the NWSL commissioner on to kind of promote the league because NWSL also, they're trying to grow the league. Yes, it's on Paramount. They do, though, have local packages. I watch a lot of the matches on Monument Sports, which is owned by NBC Sports. And it was funny how she was like, yeah, like 23 or like 22 of the 23 women on the US women's national team play in the NWSL. And I'm just like, but the one girl who scored last night doesn't. The star of the match, the entire talking point was the one person who plays in France. And
Yeah.
I thought that was really funny. And like it's a great league, and it's great that
For
they have like Jennifer Gardner investing in it and these really big attendances. But what they don't have is, I think, the branding yet. And I like how they're trying to become more community centric. But you also look at the attendances of the Women's Champions League in Europe. And you've watched those Arsenal matches. Like once again to the knockout stage, those matches are packed.
Absolutely. Touching on that, so for those who don't know, Lindsey Graham scored against the Netherlands, and for 7 years, 8 years, she played for Portland Thorns, which is an NWSL team, and I think just she hasn't played a game for Lyon yet, right? Or has she? No,
I
she
think
got
she
loaned out.
has.
She got loaned
Yeah.
out. She got loaned out. So she officially joined going into next season, and it's interesting because it's kind of the NWSL almost is like a reverse MLS, where MLS we get Messi at 38 or however old he is, and Beckham at um, an older age, and it's almost like the stars for the NWSL are going over to Europe at an older age. You know what I mean? So we kind of have that kind of reverse movement going around. So it's just kind of interesting. Just also with the ACL stuff is a huge issue as well. Just because, like you said, with their pitches aren't as standardized almost. You know what I mean? Like they're not playing on real grass all the time, and we see it now. I mean, what Arsenal player Leah Williamson out because of an ACL. Mitaba, Arsenal player. Sorry, this is my go-to example, just because I just followed this team out because of an ACL. You know what I mean? So it's just like it's still not where we want it to be for sure.
I think
And
I believe Janine Becky for Canada also out with an ACL. Like that's been the big story, is all these top players out with ACL.
ACL,
And
yeah,
I think it's a combination of pitches. I also think it might be a combination of, I don't want to say like biology, but maybe because the ACL in women's soccer is almost kind of like Tommy John in baseball. Like it's gonna happen.
yeah. It's sad to see, but I think we also live in an age where like sports science is like so far and above than what it used to be. Like there's got to be a way where we can either like space out the schedule a little bit more, where they're not putting as much work on their legs. But it there's definitely stars missing from this World Cup, and I think it's hurting everyone. I mean, it's hurting us, the viewer. It's hurting Fox. It's hurting the game that we watch. But on the flip side of that, just because some of these stars aren't in, we have some other teams coming up from unexpected territory and kind of making some noise, which is exciting as the viewer. I also just want to note that, like, yes, Pete and I are very invested in this. We love this for what it is, but we are also two guys talking about the Women's World
The excellent point.
Cup. That said, let's talk about some games though.
Let's talk about the man. Let's just run through some of these groups. Group A, New Zealand hosts, knocked out. They got a lot of potential as a footballing country. Yes, there's only 4 million people in New Zealand, I believe, but the Wellington Phoenix, the team I support when I was in Wellington, they now have a women's team that's part of the new A-League Women's that was introduced for this tournament. So Australia, they're playing really well as the host. I think they're only going to get better because that domestic league will grow. And I also think, it's tough to become a pro rugby player in New Zealand. I get rugby's king, but sometimes you just don't have the body type or physicality for rugby. But now your only option isn't just cricket. I think there's a lot of potential for this team to grow. And then also running through that group, Norway. Are they better without Edda Hegerberg?
Oh, we're throwing some hot takes out early here.
I got a hot take. I think they are.
They certainly look better. I mean, it's tough. It's tough when you only have 3 games as like the window, But
They were underwhelming in the Euros when she came back from her boycott. The boycott was justified. She's one of the heroes of the game. She's one of the best in the world. They look a little better without her. We need to quickly touch on the Philippines because that whole team are just Filipino girls from the US,
yeah,
which is genius because we talk about the systems and
yep.
You just want to make the World Cup, get some American players. And it
Hey,
kind of worked. And honestly, I want Greece to do the same thing. Just run through every women's college soccer roster. If they're a fellow TS in their last name, if there's an Ulos or an Akis, like sign them up.
that's one way to recruit some talent, though, for sure. That first I'm sorry, that first New Zealand game was electric. That was one of the highlights for sure of the first round, just because of their footballing history not being as strong, them being the host nation, partner host nation, and just what it meant. I think it was a full crowd. You know what I mean? It was a really awesome thing to see for sure.
They packed Eden Park. They were gonna pack Eden Park, and they did. Group B, I gotta touch on my Canadians. I'm not gonna blame the entire federation for being bankrupt and being in shambles. It definitely doesn't help. Look, I just think Nigeria was a team that came out of nowhere. They played really well, and it just wasn't Canada's tournament. And I'm worried about the federation as a whole, both men's and women's, because you could argue that 2021 and 2022 were some of the best years in Canadian football ever. They won the gold medal in the Olympics. Their men's team was beating the US regularly. They had so much great talent. They qualified for the World Cup for the first time since the 80s or something. And then they get to the men's World Cup and really underperform. And then they get to the women's World Cup and they really underperform. And now it turns out they're bankrupt. They're asking FIFA for a loan, just ineptitude. And it's bad. And it kind of came out of nowhere, at least from my perspective, because I don't live in the country and I just follow based on events. And I'm definitely concerned heading into them hosting the Men's World Cup in 2026, but it's just disappointing. And I feel bad for the players who have protested. They wore t-shirts that said enough is enough. And it's a sad situation for Canada. But on the flip side, like a country like Nigeria to come out of nowhere and now are going up against England, like it's just another one of those stories that's made this tournament so unpredictable, but really good.
Not to blame men, but let's blame men. I think Canada's men's team just having such an underperformance kind of put a sour note on the Canadians women's team only because um, you kind of you do have that in the back of your mind as a viewer, and the Canadian women's team full of talented people, full of talented women. I mean, Sinclair kind of going off into the sunset a little bit, and they were just like so uninspiring. And I think the men's team, what happened with the men's team, kind of fed into that a little bit. And here's the thing: they're in a group with Australia, a host nation, and Nigeria, a country who plays with a lot of energy, plays with a lot of um, uh, we deserve to be here attitude, And when you match that, talent can only go so far. When you match that with kind of like we kind of got a bummed attitude with Canada, I mean, that's gonna push you the extra mile in that 70th, 80th, 90th minute when you're looking for a goal. It's who wants it more. And I don't know. I just did not vibe with Canada this tournament at all.
Running down to Group C, all I gotta say is Japan looks good.
Oh,
here are they back?
Oh, they're so bad. I thought Spain looked excellent the first two games, and Japan just shut them right down. Japan looked excellent. They're probably the favorites to win going into the round of 16, I would think.
I would tend to agree with that. And man, could you
Which is,
imagine?
but,
Could you imagine
but
we have another Japan USA rematch? Oh man.
first of all, outside of those who follow women's soccer, I don't think Japan is looked on as a powerhouse country in terms of their footballing history, aside from their women's, because their women's team for the last 10, 15 years, dominant, dominant, dominant team. They're always in it. They won it in 2012, if I'm getting my years,
11
or
was I think it was
11,
11.
11,
Yeah.
11. They won it in 11. They were a finalist in 15.
15.
And so they're always knocking at the door. And it's just one of those things where it's just like Japan, really, and then they go out and play, and you're just like, holy crap, they're a great team.
I think we've already touched on a bit of our English team in Group D. I bet on them to win the entire tournament heading into this.
Did you?
I did, and I'm a little nervous. Some of these results have not been great,
For
but
England?
yeah, for England, even even though
That,
even though even though they finished 3-0-0,
so
I but I was worried after their match against Haiti was only 1-0. A
mhm.
little worried after their match against Denmark, only 1-0. But I feel like a good routing against China at the end has kind of maybe got the little kick that they needed.
I was talking vibe with Canada. I kind of want to talk vibe with England because they're coming off of a huge accomplishment, winning the Euros, and that was a big deal back in England. That was a big deal for women's soccer. The whole bringing it home type of situation, doing it before the men's team. They were riding high into this tournament, and I agree with you. Their matches, Haiti and Denmark, not very inspiring. As coming off that high, and I was just like, oh, wow. And now they're also dealing with a couple injuries as well as we've noted, but they definitely have enough talent to like beat Haiti, beat Denmark, beat China handedly. So I'm in the mid tier with them going into the round of 16. Although that Lauren James is just a fantastic player to watch.
We can skip over the US. We talked enough about it. We gotta go to Group F and
Okay,
talk
just
Jamaica.
just
Oh,
just one thing about Group B. Applause to Portugal. They really, really fought hard in that last game against the United States, and low key probably deserved to win.
maybe. We'll post. I don't
A
know.
little post action coming in to save the day, but yeah, just a applause to Portugal. They look like they wanted it for sure.
Dude, Jamaica is like the Greece of this World Cup. We are
Oh,
not going to allow any goals,
oh, 4
and
euros. Here we go.
we're gonna scrape by with 1 goal for, 0 goals against in 3 matches,
Listen,
and we're gonna knock off freaking Brazil.
listen. To me, at the end of the day, goals for, goals against does not matter. It's all about the wins and loss column. And Jamaica did enough to move on to the round of 16. They could it could be 1-0 like it was, and that's all that matters. You know, awesome performances from Jamaica. Really cool to see. France kind of hot and cold for me. Leigh Somer is one of my favorite players. So it's fun to watch her play. But France, again, just kind of like really, really excellent one half, and then just kind of like that's it for the second half. Kind of very hot and cold for me. I don't know what you're feeling about France.
Yeah, France is, I think you put it perfectly. Very hot and cold.
Les Bleus.
I don't have much faith in them making a run through the knockout stage. Uh Quickly going down to Group G because I want to get through these groups before we make our picks for the tournament. Sweden, I think if we're saying Japan's been the best team in the tournament, Sweden's easily the second best. They've looked fantastic. But man, South Africa has been electric. And I want them to host the next World Cup. They deserve it.
South Africa electric. I do want to say though, Sweden's probably the team outside the United States I'm rooting for because Black Stenius, Arsenal striker, is just so fun to watch. The Swedes are so fun to watch. You're probably right. It's probably, I mean, Sweden's what, number three in the world, right?
Something like that. I know they're top five.
Yeah. So another excellent team going into this tournament, and they had a half where they looked kind of bad. Like again, just kind of okay. Maybe they're just trying to find their ways. But that Italy game, they just looked dominant. So I would say Sweden is probably the second favorite over with Japan being one.
All right, and then rounding off Group H before I can talk about Colombia and Morocco having a moment. Bauer, let me see those German tears.
Oh man, tough to go out against South Korea again, men and women's if we're going to put them together. But damn, I mean that something's up with the German football league, so German football team, the national teams, because the men's and women's look piss poor. Piss poor.
They didn't pop off.
They didn't pop. They didn't pop off. You know what? That South Korea game, she was going off on her teammates. That's for sure.
Morocco having a moment.
I love it.
I mean, it's kind of like, I know it's funny because they wanted to get the World Cup instead of the US in 2026 in the men's. And it's interesting where, FIFA's like, oh, we're going to bring the game to the Arab world, but then like they have it in Qatar and then probably have it in Saudi Arabia at some point. I mean, look, not every country's perfect, but if you want to bring soccer to the Arab worlds, like Morocco should have a World Cup coming up soon. Like they already have the infrastructure. They've hosted Cup of Nations, I want to say recently. Time zones work out perfect. It's close to Europe. And again, like this women's team came out of nowhere. They're one of the lowest ranked teams.
I think, yeah, they're in the 70s, I think, if I saw correctly. I would agree with you. I think the momentum for Morocco is there for them to host. It's also there for this women's team. I mean, again, not the 2 wins, 1 loss, but like not blowing your socks off in terms of just like, whoa, look at this Moroccan team. They just have enough grit, enough talent, enough of the right tactics to pull off some victories. And guess what? When you come to a do or die situation, that's all you need to do is you need to just do a little bit better than your opponent,
All right, Bauer. We got about 5 minutes left, so I'm just gonna run through this bracket and give you some picks, and then I'll let you get a crack at it. All right, Switzerland versus Spain. I got Spain. Netherlands versus South Africa, a little colonial battle. I put in a parlay all because we got 3 colonial matchups, and I put in a little parlay where South Africa, Morocco, and Nigeria, they're all going to cover. They're all going to cover. But I do think they all lose. So whether it be an extra time or not, I don't know. So I got Netherlands beating South Africa. I got Japan beating Norway. I have Sweden beating the United States. What happened there? Oh God. Australia beating Denmark. Look, you need one Scandinavian team to move on, and it's probably going to be Sweden over the US. Look, I'm going to, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm probably going to be right. But I'm rooting for the US. I'm a patriot. God bless America. Australia over Denmark, France over Morocco, England over Nigeria. I got Jamaica over Colombia.
Wow.
I'm riding with the reggae girls. And I'll go England over Jamaica in the quarterfinal. I will have Australia over France in the quarterfinal. I will have Sweden versus Japan. It's going to be a banger of a match. I will pick Sweden over Japan, though. And then I will have the Netherlands over Spain. Netherlands over Sweden. I had Sweden making my semis and then them losing to the US. And so I think I'm going to have them losing again to
Ooh.
Sweden. And then we got England versus Australia. The hosts will win the bronze medal over the Netherlands. England will win. And that's going to be England versus Sweden. And I'm sticking with my original bet. I still got England winning this whole damn
England.
thing.
England. Hey, it's a smart play. It's a smart play. I think we got mostly the similar stuff, so I won't go like 100% down. I just want to note that I do have also Sweden going to the finals. And I'm so torn between France and England. You know what? For Russo, we'll let them have the same finals. We'll have a Sweden England finals, but I'm going Sweden.
Oh, wow.
I do also want to say Jamaica over Colombia.
There's a chance we're both fucking wrong, and
No, for
like
sure, 100%.
Nigeria knocks off England and the US beats Sweden 3-0. Because like, yeah, why would you doubt the US women's national team, the history, the legacy, and then all 45 minutes of this will just sound so stupid. And as we tout ourselves as the jackass, it's like we know more than Fox Sports, and we could just be totally wrong.
I will admit up firsthand that anybody could beat anybody on any single day. You know what I mean? And you know, the most favored country can play the least favored country, and we can all say the favorite country wins, and it just takes one little bounce. You know what I mean?
Kind of like how Germany lost to Zambia before this World Cup. That should have been a warning sign.
You're just gonna keep bringing it up, aren't you?
Yep.
Listen, Germany. You win 6-0 in your first game. It's cruise line to it's easy sailing to this round of 16, and you can't make it. Like, we got problems. We need to sit down and talk.
All right, Bauer, thanks for coming back on the show. I cannot wait to publish this after some of these matches have been played, and we'll be like 0 for 4. But it's great talking to you. Let's talk after this tournament. We'll break down the knockout stage, and we'll see if we're right, or we'll see if we're dead wrong. And knowing my luck, we're probably going to be dead wrong.
Always great to talk to you, Pete.
I'm Pete Siff. This is Sip Talk. Watch the Women's World Cup, and thanks for listening.